Good. So today we're gonna talk. We're gonna start our talk with the accounts section. The only last piece of the puzzle on the left hand menu. So whenever you're working with Heimdal, you have two types of accounts: license accounts or tenants, and then login accounts. Login accounts can be multiple emails connected to one tenant. And by tenant, we could have an MSP tenant, we could have a corp tenant, regardless. In this situation, we will be looking at the MSP level. So when you click on accounts, you get to see your account first and all the login accounts within your Heimdal network, so to say. That includes, since I'm connected to a level 2 account, a reseller slash MSP account, I get to see all my reseller colleagues, the ones that clearly have the R role assigned over here, but I also get to see the corp logins. In some situations, even if MSPs, you might want some corp logins for some of your technicians that you want to segregate so that they don't get to see other corps and so on and so forth. Now, when you create these accounts, before you create them, if you already have a logic, a structure as to what do you want your technicians to do, you could actually create a custom role or multiple, depending on what you need. As an example here, my good friend Robertino, which is our head of pre-sales, created limited access type of role, PAM admin type of role, remote desktop user, tech monitoring role, and one of his favorites, yada yada. Now, when you create a new role, you have something that is called claims. So each of our products have different claims. Usually they are in the range of control. And when you switch off the full control, you can even switch off the basic viewing of said space. I'll just do two examples here so that we don't stop the session to review hundreds of claims in this list. But basically, just this one, manage the account. Ability to view and or edit the allowed dashboard account logins. Now, you could allow people to do everything. You could take away deleting accounts or editing accounts, right? And you can just let them create accounts like level 1, or you can even do one better and give it like a supervisor role, just to view accounts and never to have the possibility to create. Then what is actually interesting, question from anyone, or
No, no.
okay, cool. What is interesting is that you can actually, if you already have synchronized the Azure AD, we talked about that in the previous video under guide, you can actually tie this particular role that you're creating to the Azure group
What?
so that anybody from that Azure group would automatically have this particular role. So again, more in the space of making things easier. Now, maybe you don't want to use custom account management. Is there any other way in which somebody can change the permissions, restrictions, and possibilities that an account has? Yes, there is. I'll just open my colleague's account over here, and I can go into access control and do the same process, including their ability to edit a word or take away user account permissions. The only thing that you cannot do is you cannot give claims to yourself. And if you are the first master admin, that means that you have the full claim list. You're not missing anything. And then in order to make sure that you never get your account modified, what you need to do is the rest of the accounts that you create, just take away their permissions to do that, or leave permissions for just a few select people in the organizations to be able to modify the claims on the accounts. Now, with that being said, let's actually look at a level 2 MSP account. I'll just use MSP as a terminology, but I'm referring to any level 2, which is any reseller or MSP. What can you do from your account space? So just to cover this, you would need a login email one logging email can be attached to one Heimdal dashboard account at the same time. If anybody else tries to create an account with this login email, it will fail because this is already in use. Because think about it logically, when I connect, to which account will this connect me to? Of course, that's why this is a unique type of situation. Then time zone, preferred to be automatic. What does this do and how does this impact the situation? So whenever you have time zone automatic, whenever you are in products or in active clients and you look at details that had a particular timestamp, you will have that timestamp matching your local computer time. That's why time zone always recommended on automatic, even if you know which time zone this person is in, this person might actually travel and change time zones, and that is preferred to be on automatic. Currency will impact their return on investment report, and of course, dashboard language. This is pretty self-explanatory, so we'll just move forward. This is also the place where you could do a quick password reset if you want to. Then name and phone number, not mandatory, but ideally we would have something over here. And this is the place where I actually wanted to get to because this is useful for MSPs in general. So this is called the partner reports matrix. And what I can do in this one is search any of my active customers. Let's do hotel customer. Hotel customer. I can add them to this particular list by hitting add customer. And now I have a bunch of alerts and reports that I can configure. So the categories are, I have the alerts section here, and I have the reports section here. Actually, I think they kind of mixed around in this latest update that was released a few days ago. Let me actually tell you what you will find in each of them. If any failure in Microsoft Update, so update has started, somebody shut down the computer or anything like that, you will be notified. If any AV detection will take place, you will be notified. If anybody wants a privileged admin session, you will be notified. If any detection in the ransomware protection engine is found, you will be notified. If any VectorN alert is found. And now what's VectorN? Machine learning that is complementary to the DNS security, which monitors traffic for discrete patterns of advanced threats such as info stealer, botnet, beaconing, command and control, you name it, right? So again, you will be notified. Now we go into the reports section. Threat prevention endpoint reports, and you would need to give it the interval where you want these reports to come to your email. It will basically take these number of days since the moment that you saved this new decision. It will include to your report activity that has been done in the Heimdal DNS endpoint, as well as in the Heimdal patching, both third-party applications as well as OS updates. TPN reports would be your DNS network activity. Next-Gen AV reports will show you a quick summary of what has happened on this particular tenant within the last X number of days based on your decision. Brute force alerts reports, again, the same thing. It will give you a quick overview of what happened. Now, this is something that is interesting. This is a new one that just came out, I believe. Follow-up reports. This is, let's call it an executive summary of what happened within the last 30 days in general with Heimdal. So this is something that, let's say, an MSP would then take and show a customer if they want to, or just take assets from it and build their own reports. And also there's the zero trust security, which is actually an alert, not a report. Whenever a zero trust execution is stopped, and by zero trust, we will get to the technology later, it means they don't have a trusted software certificate. Whenever that happens, you will get an alert. And last but not least, GP changes alerts. Because at the end of the day, if anybody changes our settings, which our settings provide our security and permissions, we need to know. So in case anybody changes, you have this particular alert and you will receive this information. Good. Ideally, you might have this for all your customers, but then again, think about the segregation. You don't want one technician to receive something from 300 customers, right? You might want one technician on 10 customers, the other on the other 10, so on and so forth, depending more on how you want to organize this. Now let's move down and let's see what about these roles and what about this IP part. Now these roles, by default, when you create a new account, if it's a MSP level account, you will need to tick in the reseller role. If it's a customer, which again, we don't kind of want to give accounts to customers in the cases of MSPs. However, maybe for any reason, you need to give a technician an account to only one Heimdal tenant. And in that case, you would not check in neither reseller or visitor. You will just let it blank and it will be connected to that tenant. A visitor role would be for, let's say, auditors. They only have visibility of what's happening. They cannot even take out a report out of it. And then moving to IP list, this is where you would do your third security level. Actually, I believe it's the first security level in my opinion. And this is where you tell Heimdal where to accept a connection to the dashboard, where to accept a connection from, to connect into the dashboard. So you can do a IP range, which is what we offer by default, so that the customer has no issue connecting. However, it is always recommended after the customer did their initial connection, just open a browser tab, right? Go and say, what's my public IP? Hit enter, take that particular IP. Or if they know their subnet, their range of IPs, whatever, take their IPs that they want to put in, like work IP, maybe home IP, maybe, I don't know, my mother-in-law's home IP, or anywhere that I know I might connect from. Because if we just leave it like this, we let attackers, we just give them some slack, cut them some slack to try to hack us, right? So this is recommended to be changed. A single IP, you just put a single IP. A range is exactly like this, describing the flexibility between IP1 and IP2 and the entire range in between. And the list of IPs is actually what I would recommend. And again, put your office, put anything that actually makes sense, right? Okay. Now, just for a quick overview, this is what you would see when you create a new account. The same things, the only small difference over here is this part. Under additional settings, do not require 2FA. In case we ever have any type of issues with activating the 2FA, it might be that the user is a bit slow that day, or it might be that, I don't know, they just don't get how to activate this. If it ever happens, just disable this initially. They will get to see this red bar when they connect and have them log out and activate their 2FA afterwards. And again, this would be never recommended if this is an account that already has real customers under it. It might be okay at the beginning when there are no customers, but then always have your 2FA open because, again, we all understand what's the risk with this one. Good. Now, another thing, if you do select a MSP level account over here and you don't select the reseller standard role, when you try to save, it will actually tell you that the type of customer you have selected does not match the role you have selected over here. So the error will help you in actually correcting the process and moving forward. So that's pretty much it, what you can do from the accounts section. Now, based on our list, we
Andre?
should... Please, Jason.
Any word on advanced MFA like SAML or intra SSO or anything like that? Some of our larger MSP clients, if they're going to use a platform like this that controls the entire security landscape, would require at least SAML for an MFA authentication.
Now, you do have the SAML authentication, but it will work with
I was just kidding.
The
I just want to make sure you knew it was there.
the Azure AD and SAML setup over here. So the only SSO that's currently working is with the Azure AD, and you do have the guides over here how to do that.
I was just checking
Uh,
you out. I was just checking you out. So.
Thank you, Jason. It's good to have these checks from time to time just to be sure I'm still on the top of my game. Okay, so when we go into the products, we just need to understand one thing. Heimdal works via group policies, which you will find in endpoint settings for the endpoints. And when it comes to server level products, you just map them in the network settings. We're going to start with this one because this one is the biggest chunk and what's in focus for future safe. So
Andre,
I'll just, mhm.
one thing that I've noticed, and I want to be able to have you consider this as we move through the various training components, is that there are two core issues that I think our subject matter experts run into. One of them is where to start the MSP from a policy perspective. You know, we have
Okay.
a master policy, but that seems to cause more trouble than not. And the other one, which I failed to mention earlier, but I probably should have, is one of the reasons why we struggle with DNS security in Heimdal is because it failed to, um, I failed to realize that I have security guys with multiple years of security, but nobody's ever taught them DNS. They don't even know what it is. I mean, vaguely, right? So how in the world can they troubleshoot and appropriately configure something that deals with loopback addresses and network DNS and that kind of thing? So um, I think that's
Okay.
part of the trouble. And then the third part is, well, yeah, that's good. We'll stop there.
Okay. Then I'll keep these two in mind. I did create a quick document since we started the sessions the last time in which I took some notes on those recommendations with the master policies. And I will fully explain policy assignment in this one. So just for referencing back to the previous video, we have the ability within this platform to have a master policy at the distribution level, which is future safe. Then that master policy can be cascaded into the reseller level, which is your MSPs. And then the MSPs can actually cascade to end customer accounts like this by opting in the master reseller policy. And just to do a quick refresh, it is a very good tool to be used as an initial starting point. However, if you want to use it long term, the only risk that appears is that the tenant itself cannot change things only at its level. If something needs to change in the policy, such as an uninstall of an application, an allow list for the DNS, uh, any exclusion in the antivirus, or any application control exclusion or allowed item. Now, when that happens, you literally you don't actually just open that up for one tenant, one customer. When you do that at the master policy level, you now impact in a cascade everybody that actually has that policy active. So that's why we would use these policies as templates because they have a lot of work invested in them from future safe. We will use them as templates and just copy paste to another policy at this level. And then that policy, I can actually change it. And I will also send this document over with notes from today and all the other sessions that we will be looking at. Now, since we are talking about policies, let's talk about how do my computers know in which of these 32 policies it should actually join? That's the question. And that's actually the golden question. And I'll explain quickly. So when I go in my unified endpoint management and look at my devices, I will notice two columns called current group policy and selected group policy. And I just want to make sure that I find one on automatic perfect. So whenever a new endpoint, server, endpoint, laptop, Android, whatever, whenever you install Heimdal on something new with a license key, it knows to attach itself to this account. However, then it needs to attach itself to one of the policies. So what happens when it does that? When a new endpoint comes in, like these two, they will have selected group policy on auto mode, automatic, which means they go here and they look for any type of special assignment rules, such as local computer part of the PAM local computer. If a yes, then in this situation, it asks, is this user to the computer?
Andre, we lost the last 15. We lost the last
Yeah.
15 seconds of your audio.
Okay, okay, cool.
No,
Yeah, it's just getting
still bad.
worse.
It's a bit weird. Let me check my mic for a second. Settings.
Seems better now. It sounded like you
Is
had
it
some
better?
compression.
Okay. Might be something from the.
Yeah, it's doing it again.
This is weird. Let me.
Yeah, it just came out of nowhere.
This is weird. I'm also in the office, so it should have very good internet there. Any better?
No, I think it's a compression thing, an audio compression thing more than a hardware thing.
Let me turn off noise suppression. This is it. Any difference?
Not yet.
Not yet. How about
again?
Okay.
Nope.
This is weird. Doesn't happen. So that we do a quick test. We jump back in.
All right. Yeah, we'll wait for you. Well. Imran, what's your knowledge level on the logic behind group policy inheritance?
Okay. How's the audio now?
I'm cautiously optimistic here. It's a little better.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Good.
This is a known thing with teams that, when you have more than, 3 people, I think it's 3, that sometimes you get in the middle of, if you don't have a phone number tied to Teams, where you don't have the version of Teams that actually has VoIP connection, they derate the traffic prioritization in Teams for people who have it bundled in Office versus people who use it as a tool and pay for it. So that's just kind of a known thing. So we might want to do these in your preferred platform of choice, whether that's go to webinar or whatever. Or we can use Zoom, whichever you prefer.
Webinar, move to Zoom if anything. We'll see how the video recording goes out of this one, and we'll pivot based off of that. Okay.
Got it.
Cool. Then yeah, going back to the policies, I was telling you guys, how does an endpoint know where to join? Normally, it comes in with automatic value. It needs to find the policy to join. So automatic value looks for two things in this order of priority. Any specific assignment indications, such as local AD computer group, local AD user group, Azure groups, or external facing IP. If, let's say, this computer has no connection to any of these that are listed in this huge list, or if the groups that are in your list do not have any type of special assignment criteria, what it does is it looks at this value here called priority, and it will join the one with the highest number that is also on as a status. So that's the automatic rule. What happens if I then take this and put it at the top of the list? This will take the highest priority. So said endpoints that are on automatic and are leveraging the highest priority in the list will actually find out that this is no longer a high priority, and they have another group to go to, and they will move automatically. So again, first is specific indications to AD groups, AD user groups, Azure AD and IP, and second is priority. Now, there's also a way to manually decide where an endpoint sits, but this is only after it already joined Heimdal. So in order to do that, you would select said endpoint or group of endpoints, right? And where you have the option to apply a specific GP, you would send it to one specific GP out of your list. And from that moment onwards, what it will do is it will stick to that one group policy until one of two things happen. Somebody changes it again, either to another group policy or back to automatic, or somebody deletes the group policy. In that moment, it will need to switch back to automatic and find another group, because there is no possibility in which you have endpoints, servers, any type of device with Heimdal installed that they will not be in a group. They always need to be in the group because that's what dictates the settings, permissions, restrictions, and so on. So going back to the settings, we should also, before we open one of the policies, talk about group policies inheritance mode, because this comes as a question pretty often. Group policy inheritance mode has been created for the purpose of cascading the third-party patch management rules from the group with the highest priority to all the other groups below. Just an example how somebody would use it. I usually tend to avoid it because I want to keep a clean operation, but some people love this, love the intricate things in life. So how would you use this? Let's say you do inheritance mode on patching. And again, also the info bubble says this is only applied for third-party patches. So this particular policy says automatically install 3 applications and keep them at the latest version. Now, if you go in any of the other groups and you do not mark those 3 applications, they will still be installed based on the inheritance of the rule from the master policy. If the master policy says uninstall, I don't know, Chrome, regardless if you have that information in the other policies, it will still cascade because it's in the top priority policy. And again, this also has the situation in which if you switch priorities and you don't keep the top priority, this one anymore, this will again change and redo the entire cascading of information. That's why I usually don't recommend using this one unless you are a fan and you are in need of such an option. Now, we will open one of the policies, and I believe that with the remainder of our time, we can cover the general aspect of the policy in general management. Good. So in the first moment when you open the policy, you have 2 navigation spaces. You have the main tabs over here, in which you'll find general settings or settings pertaining to unified endpoint management, starting this latest version of our console. Then you have the DNS, patch and asset management, endpoint detection with the products that are underneath here, privileges and app control, email protection, and remote desktop. Now, under general, you'll find general settings, as well as the latest additions that are BitLocker management and scripting. Let's talk about the general management. This is where you would do the basic information about your policy, starting with a name for the policy, a language for the, I believe that language, sorry if I'm wrong on this one, this is the language of the agents. Yes, and I'm not wrong. The language of the portal is access from account. Language of the agents that will be in this policy, you access it from this list. The difference being agent is available in more languages than the dashboard. But again, we're talking about US, so we're just going to stick to English. Priority will be automatically assigned, and then you can look in the list and drag and drop them as I did earlier. This is where you would do your AD group assignment. And when it comes to this, just to explain what's happening behind the scenes, you do not need to install any connector to the local AD of the customer. It will just run some backend queries in the computer and ask the computer, is this computer a part of a domain controller? Yes, no. If yes, is this computer a part of group 1, 2, 3, or 4? Then yes, no, depending on the situation. Same thing with users and same thing with external IP. Very careful. If you put multiple assignment criteria, and by the way, I see a problem here. If you put multiple assignment criteria, all criteria needs to match in order for an endpoint to be assigned to the policy. So this again is a heavy situation and it should be used only when you really have some very, very niched cases. Normally, I would go with one AD group or user group, computer group, or one IP if you want to do it per subnets or anything like that. Then we have a few dials over here that we can play around with. Policy check interval. This determines the time that an agent checks to call, waits until it calls back to the Heimdal servers so that it can actually see if there were any changes made to the policy for it to do any type of job. Then we have the license check interval, which it's pretty self-explanatory. CPU and memory threshold. What do these do? So whenever Heimdal does set check within the agent to cloud, it also registers two values. What's the percentage of CPU that is in use, and what's the percentage of memory that is in use in that moment? If that is over the value that you select here in these dials, in that moment, you get a warning. And we will talk about that warning. Actually, I think we covered that one going back to unified endpoint management in active clients, where you look at the details of a computer. That's where you see that warning. Or if you look at your computers in hardware mode. Going further, proxy. Now, if you know the customer has a proxy, and actually, let me take a step back. When you do any type of Heimdal implementation, the first few questions when you get to the deployment part of things are you using a proxy? Most of the people will say no, because proxies are kind of an old technology that are not being used anymore. However, if this is a manual proxy, you can just enter the details here, no proxy, or just use system default, which is what we all do. And another one is, are you using any type of perimeter external firewall? Because again, the firewall will not block the connections that go from within the network towards the exterior. However, when the Heimdal portal sends back information to your client, that might be blocked at the firewall level. So for that, on our support page, we have a huge guide with all the IP services and everything that need to be added as exclusions within said firewall rules. Now, going to additional settings, this is pretty interesting. It's related to a bunch of products. So we're just going to start from the top. One of my favorite, and I know one of Adam's favorite, is including a release candidate program. When you switch this on, all the endpoints that are attached to this group will get an upgrade to the release candidate agent, which is our public beta program. Switching this off will not immediately downgrade it. It will need to wait until Heimdal does its next production push, and then it will be switched back to production version. Do not show graphical user interface. This will start the services. However, it will not automatically start the GUI of the application. You can manually go in the search box, type in Heimdal, and start the GUI. That will not be blocked. However, it will not appear on startup. Real-time communication cancels out the policy check interval from whatever value you placed here, and it will do a policy check every minute of the day. Then skip prompting the client when requesting logs.
Can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
Real-time communication is particularly important for a few modules. The one that, of course, jumps to mind is the PAM module, because if someone's requesting an elevation, you don't want 15 minutes to go by for that elevation request to come through to your inbox or PAM mobile app.
Yeah,
There's
it's
other use
basically
cases too, but that's like one that I've seen.
it
really
basically
important.
would take 5 minutes for the user to receive his response to the elevation if it was a yes or no from the admin. With real-time communication, we receive it every minute. So yeah, but if you have proper computers, no problems, good resources, you could actually keep this on full. More slower computers wouldn't be recommended, right? Because Heimdal does checks for all these products when it does the policy check. So it's it's a let's see how it goes type of situation. But important to know exactly what this does. It will ping from the agent, the cloud console, every minute of the day. Now, logs. What logs are we talking about over here? First, Heimdal has the ability from the portal, and we went over this in the first session, to extract certain logs from the endpoint to the console, and then you can download them from the console with the password-protected archive and open them in whatever environment you wish. What logs could we extract? You can extract Heimdal logs, you can extract event viewer logs, and you can also extract files that have been found dangerous by the AV. And this streamlines operations a lot versus having the users need to click a yes or a no when you request the log extraction. Okay, then this particular one, we're just gonna jump over this one. It's a super niche one, so we don't need it. Enforced uninstall password. This is a second layer for anti-tampering. It will require this additional password whenever you are faced with an uninstall type of action on the Heimdal agent. Synchronize with time server. This will force your endpoints to synchronize with the internet time server that's closest to it across the globe. Wake on LAN gives you the active button in the agent's view where you look at your computers. And if and only if the NIC card on that computer allows Wake on LAN, then this would actually sync in with that and power up computers, wake them up, and so on. Depending again, what is the NIC card configured or able to do. Allowing network scans. This is one of my favorites because with this one, you get to, again, scan a network from an endpoint. And I'll just go quickly to these after we finish the list. And you can see what other devices you have on that network. And you also have the option to just push install Heimdal if you are also using a domain controller and have the package already there. If not, you at least know what other devices you have on your network that don't have Heimdal, and you can log in a ticket and start doing that work as well. Collect telemetry data. This will enable the sysmon on the endpoint, and it will allow the Heimdal modules, mostly the extended threat protection, which is very important, to use the sysmon as well as a few other places in the computer, such as event viewer, such as process information creation, anything that happens at process level and so on, so that the extended threat protection can warn you if anything is happening that is bad. Whenever you have an isolation happening, which again is a functionality that can happen manually or automatically upon some conditions, you can automatically collect logs as a command rather than needing to press a button to collect the logs. And now these last three that we're looking at here are priority update servers, which means that whenever you have third-party patching involved, you can actually designate a certain machine in the network so that it takes the updates from the Heimdal cloud and redistributes them to the Heimdal endpoints. Since this is an interesting feature for air-gapped environments, just worth saying, all the computers that have Heimdal installed need to communicate with the Heimdal cloud so that they know what are the requirements that they have. After they have requirements, what they will do is ping the priority update server. And the priority update server is then responsible to grab the packages from the Heimdal cloud, then redistribute them across the network. But again, that means that the computers need to have access to the Heimdal cloud. They will just not download the patches themselves. Then synchronized group policy pop-up. This is something that we don't usually come across, it's basically, let's say, when the policy has been updated, you get to get the pop-up message that the policy has been updated, and this happens on the agent itself. Or you can keep it silent. And keep cached items indefinitely means that the priority update server will not delete the downloaded packages from Heimdal. It will keep them indefinitely, because then a new endpoint might want the same package, and to avoid re-downloading it, you can keep them indefinitely if you have the space. If not, then it would be wise to take this off. And that's pretty much it. The additional check for interval is attached to the priority update server functionality. Now, the last two buttons that you can see on this page, and what will close today's session, is duplicate group policy, so that things are easy, and you can do that from the menu itself, and delete group policy. Be very careful with the delete group policy, because if you delete and it has endpoints attached to it, all of them will switch back to automatic. So you just need to make sure that you have a safe policy at the top of the priority list. Otherwise, they will just go in whatever policy and take whatever settings are in that policy. And I appreciate you guys sitting with me a few more moments. I did promise that we're going to look at the active clients view and review the few things that are attached to this from what we just talked. So we have the actions that we were talking about, such as wake on LAN, right? If I disable this functionality in the policy, this button goes away. Priority update server assignment, scan for non-Heimdal devices. This is the ability to go in the network and scan. And that's pretty much it from the buttons that we just talked about. But we also talked about that hardware notification. In hardware view, you get to see the memory and the CPU percentage that was in use when Heimdal did the last check. And also, we talked about those logs, and we also talked about those warnings. So when you open any device profile like this, you can go to logs, you will see the warnings that were issued for this computer. For example, this one, an update has started at this particular timestamp, finished at this timestamp. Then any hardware overconsumption will be shown here, and you will know when it has been resolved, and so on and so forth. Then Heimdal endpoint logs. This is where you would ask Heimdal to submit the logs directly within the portal. You can also request them, and when you do, just for example, you will get an email to the email that you have attached to the portal as a confirmation. After you do that, you will see it here. It will have a password protection, and you can download it and then use it. Then you have the Windows Event Viewer logs, which again does the same process for Windows Event Viewer. Remote desktop logs, which we did not talk about, but I will tell you all about them when we get to this product. And the files which are pertaining to the AV, we're going to talk about it when we get to the AV. So yeah, that concludes today's session. Guys, let me know if you have any questions on these. If not, starting tomorrow, we go heavy within each product. We talk about technology, we talk about configuration, functionality that comes out of said configuration, and also day-to-day management and operations with the products. Any questions?
Nope. Thank you, Andre. Appreciate you taking the time to go through this. Jason, I will put the recording in just the raw format into the WeTransfer site. And we'll talk again soon. Any last questions?